Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 PM GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Windows on the World. Been doing quite a lot of shows lately, and we've covered this mind virus in quite a lot of detail, and also looked at some of the deep philosophical kind of things that are happening. And I'm getting contacted by a lot of people at the moment. It's really interesting. People that I've been in contact with over the years, and they're phoning me up saying, well, this looks like a chance to actually really get some sort of networks going. And I think it is. There's a lot happening, and I'm very positive about it all. We are in unprecedented times. So welcome, everybody. I'm just trying to get the chat room going because I've just refreshed the page and it looks like I might be locked out of the chat room. But if you're able to get into the chat room, that's fine. Good evening to Monthly Blimpton and anybody else who's in there. I've been doing a lot of shows on RBN, Republic Broadcasting Network, which is a radio station coming out of Texas. And I'm on there every Tuesday at 8 p.m. and every Thursday at 8 p.m. Last week, I was lucky enough to get hold of John Waters. Now, if you don't know who John Waters is, he's a journalist. Was a mainstream journalist for a long time, and now he's kind of independent-minded, independent thinking, and he's teamed up with Gemma O'Doherty, who maybe you know, maybe you don't. If you know about what's happening in Ireland, check out Gemma O'Doherty. She actually got banned from her YouTube channel. I think she still has a website and does a lot of good work. She's teamed up with John Waters, and they're taking the Irish government on over this new bill that's been passed through their parliament. Remember that in Ireland, they actually have a written constitution and we don't. Very interesting kind of challenge is going on. I covered that last week on Thursday with Paul, the Irish megaphone, and we managed to get hold of John Waters just before the show. He called me just before we went on air. So go back into the archive if you'd like to listen to that. It's on windowsontheworld.net. Scroll down to RBN Show Archive, or go to RBN and put Windows on the World in. And we got into really what this is about, because the global action plan, the bigger picture, this rollout across the world through the beneficial crisis, the speeding up through the beneficial crisis of COVID-19, is really where we're at. And tonight's show is called the AI robots, the artificial intelligence robots of COVID-19. I thought of that about 2 minutes ago, actually. But I've got some really interesting stuff to get through. Here's an opening thought. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. That's from Revelations. Now, the City of London, the dragon, gives its authority to the Global Action Plan and has set up everything it needs to profit and control what is known as the Fourth World. We're now in what the globalists referred to as the Fourth World. The Fourth World wilderness. It can be referred to as the wilderness of the mind. But Mark Carney, ex-head of the Bank of England, fronts the climate-related financial task force for basically climate-related disclosures to bring everything into line under the fourth industrial revolution, which is what we are in. This is the whole idea of what this pandemic is really about. It's to bring forward artificial intelligence, obviously through the Internet of Things, 5G, the collapse of the economies, the ruination of people, and the eventual and quite impending dependence on the state. And this is where I think the idea of being sovereign and really starting to think is occurring to people who are waking up to this properly, because that's why people have been contacting me over the last few weeks. And there is a network, and a growing network, of interested and interesting people. But yes, the green face of global looting and destruction of all those outside the influence of JP Morgan is actually what's going on. JP Morgan are going to be the de facto green bank. They are AAA, they are up there. So whatever happens, JP Morgan will be controlling the narrative. Also got to remember, let's go back in history. The Global Environmental Facility was set up in 1987. basically creating the debts that grab the assets. This was at the World Wilderness Conference, and we have to remember also that the World Wilderness Conference, Wild 11, this year was cancelled because of COVID-19. It was done partially online, but at that conference it was mainly relating to the stewardship, or basically privatisation, of 50% of the world's land and oceans. Yes, this is all going on behind the mind virus. The privatisation of the planet. Yes, Wild 11 was postponed due to the plandemic. The planning of this crisis and its rollout seem now to have proved that we are in the wilderness of the mind. You can see it everywhere. People queuing up, people wearing masks, people snitching on their neighbours, people believing everything that's coming out of the television without actually taking anything else on board. But yeah, the Global Action Planners also call this the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The Internet of Things and artificial intelligence are what we are going to be talking about tonight, amongst a little bit of philosophy and prophecy. But the end of traditional humans is thought to be necessary. Now, after the Common Core education system, and the education system really which has been going back the last 100 years, and the implementation of psychological social engineering from the beginning part of the century, it is assumed that the hive workers can be replaced by robots. Now, this is the fatal flaw in the thinking of the social engineers, in my opinion. It has been argued, though, by academics that it was actually trade that brought about the mathematical and mechanistic worldview. Now, isn't that interesting? And of course, the traders who got rich out of this then became the people who are now the eugenicists. The church, though, had the view that all the material world was from God, creation. The social engineers believe that there is a new God of artificial intelligence which can override decisions to make and create, which is what we are discussing here. It cannot. Obviously, when you think about this from a situation of awareness, this cannot possibly happen. But this is the fatal flaw in the thinking of these people, in my opinion. So, yeah, the social engineers do believe that there is a God of artificial intelligence. They actually believe that artificial intelligence can actually be real intelligence. It cannot, but those rolling it out are themselves in a virtual reality which has entrapped their minds. This is a kind of mind virus within itself. They are no longer able to think outside the box. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed this with these think tanks, these people who are working in media, these people who are working in the institutions that are behind what is going on? These people cannot think outside the box, which is going to be their fatal flaw. This becomes clear when we look at strategic intelligence. Go and have a look at strategic intelligence on the World Economic Forum website. You will be in for a treat, but also you will realise that what they are planning cannot possibly succeed. And the reason it cannot possibly succeed is because it does not take into account the spontaneity and unpredictability of those who are outside the hive mind. It tries to, and it tries to push them back into the box, but it never will successfully do this. So there is a line in the sand. Those complacent, complicit and compliant who stand in lines, question nothing, spite their neighbours and have become the hive mind are now on the wrong side of history. Going along with the occasional look into philosophy and prophecy, though, is what we are going to be doing next. The depiction of the destruction of Egypt in a text called The Perfect Discourse is in a volume of what is known as the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, found in Upper Nile, Egypt in 1945. They were written in Greek and they are thought to have dated from around 2 to 400 AD. But obviously, a lot of this stuff must have been written way before then. Now this, what I'm going to read out here, is from the depiction of the destruction of Egypt Yet the text is called the perfect discourse between Hermes Trismegistus and his disciples. Just seeing if I can get back into chat here because there's people in there. I seem to have locked myself out. But yeah, very interesting. I think we're back in, yeah. Now, this is from Nag Hammadi. The perfect discourse between Hermes Trismegistus and his disciples. The world will be desolate is the title of this text. People will prefer darkness to light and death to life. No one will gaze up to heaven. Well, they don't, do they? They're too busy looking into their phones. The godly will be considered mad, and the impious will be honoured as wise. Sounds like the BBC, doesn't it? Sounds like all news media. It sounds like everything that's coming out of strategic intelligence. The coward will be considered strong, and the good person will be punished as a criminal. Concerning the soul and the things of the soul and whatever has to do with immortality, these things will not only be considered to be ridiculous, they will also be regarded as being nothing. Well, this is it, isn't it? The lostness of the mind. Believe me, people like this will expose themselves to the ultimate danger to their souls. A new law will be established. Well, it has, quite recently. And the good spirits will depart, but the wicked angels will remain among people and be with them, and lead them recklessly into what is evil and into godlessness, war and pillage, by teaching them things contrary to nature, which is exactly where we're going. In those days the earth will be unstable, and people will not sail the sea or discern the stars in heaven. Every sacred word of God will become silent, and the air will become unhealthy. This is the senility of the world. Godlessness, dishonour, contempt for noble words. The first and only deity has seen what has happened. He formulates his plan, a good plan against the chaos. He eradicates error and eliminates evil, sometimes drowning it in a flood, at other times burning it in a conflagration, and at other times subduing it with wars and plagues, until he brings of this work the birth of the world. This is the birth of the world. The restoration of nature of the pious and the good has no beginning, even as his nature, which is his, and his will has no beginning. God's nature is will, and his will is the good. So, those who are not filled with awareness and understanding of the situation they are in will assist it. I think that was the kind of gist of what I was saying earlier on. And that was from the Nag Hammadi scriptures, that short bit of text, which I thought was very relevant. They will participate in their own demise and oversee the demise of others. This is, of course, down to individual choice, and everyone has been given a will. But the willpower in many is now noticeably absent. The only will they seem to have is to comply with what they're being told, and to snitch on their neighbours, to join the hive mind. As we enter the new phase, accelerating into what the Global Action Plan has called the Fourth World, I've just been recapping on years of archives and information today. And there's quite an interesting show we did a while ago. It's called Globalists Create the Fourth World. Now, these two shows clearly lay out how the climate change agenda is a management concept and control system of all assets and energy under the banner of sustainable development, which is being rapidly enforced under the mind virus of COVID-19. So, a big archive of the history of the current planned crisis is available there, and the speeding up of the process is available in the recent shows we've done, and that is where we are at the moment. We are now in the fourth world. The fourth world wilderness, as described by the globalists in 1992, will be the lostness of the mind, the collective consciousness. This is why everyone has to be forced into the hive. No one will be left behind, but some will remain underground. That's what I'm seeing. Planning is required, though, and strategies must be put into place. Reacting against the enforcement's pointless, as this is already written into the programme, so there's no point reacting against this and protesting against it. A protest by definition, is written into the program that is coming out of the very organisations who are implementing it. So in other words, the people who tell you that everything that you're saying is a conspiracy theory are the people who've been programmed to say it by those who taught them to call it a conspiracy theory. Everything is part of the hive, so it's thinking outside the box that is the most important thing for now. The hive minders have already been brought into this hive mind concept using the New Age, drugs, and of course, most importantly, propaganda and television at every level of belief. The ultimate aim was a one world belief system based on Gaia or Earth worship, and that is still the controlling factor, even with the AI agenda. And how can those two run together? Well, in actual fact, they complement each other in this new Gaia religion, because this is all about an artificial worship of the earth. And this is all about artificial intelligence. This is not about organic intelligence. This is about digital intelligence, which is not intelligence. It's just algorithmic. So the programmed reactionaries dreamed about by the psychological society are here. This is the defining point. As I said earlier, I think the line's been drawn in the sand now. But do see our previous shows and another article called New Age Global Governance. We talk about this lostness of the mind, the noosphere, these crazy ideas that the technocrats had from the beginning of the century onwards. To understand where we are now, we have to understand that this was planned a long time ago. And of course, the beneficial crisis of COVID-19 has been a container to speed up the process. Yes, mental health, bankruptcy and death are on the horizon, and opportunities are arising within the digital chaos being presented to us. The prophecies, which may well tie in with the mind virus, do seem to be relevant at this moment in time, and I'm getting this information from many contacts. A lot of people are telling me this, and our show with Stephen and Evan Strong last Wednesday was quite along the lines of what we're talking about here. Some people seem to get the wrong idea about that, and I've put a note at the beginning on the pinned post there, because this show was not about anything New Age. It was about the belief system of the Aboriginals in Australia around Uluru and this kind of prophecy. And the amazing thing was, if you haven't listened to it, that one of these Aboriginals prophesied, and this I loved, prophesied the toilet roll shortage. The collection of bog rolls was prophesied. Oh, I love that. I think that's fantastic. But yeah, the line is in the sand. Those compliant, complacent and complicit are now on the other side. The mind virus is spread through TV. Basically, that's all it's doing it at the moment, isn't it? It is a digital virus for the digital age. Ambiguous signals run along lies and deception. And the facts about this created and manufactured crisis have been the subject of most of our recent shows. So I'm not going to go too much into the information about the virus tonight, because we've covered that. We've covered the virus itself. We've covered the statistical fraud that's going on, the very distressing element of the NHS being complicit, and also having this mindless need to virtue signal and be narcissistic with these dance routines that must have taken them ages to get together. It's all being trivialised. Children are painting rainbows, welcoming the Noahide laws. This is all very concerning. Yes, I did bring in an affidavit last week that there is no evidence that an order of staying at home is safe, beneficial or necessary, and it is believed that none exists. The UK government has been wrongly advised by lobbyists working for third-party interests. This is against the public interest. I am going to actually put out this as a template, but please don't use a template. You have to be outside the hive mind and use your own, because template organisations are no use at all. Template organisations are what the globalists roll out all over the world. And once this template is found out, then it's busted. So I think the real intelligence to combat artificial intelligence is the ever-changing creativity of what we can actually do. Yes, I won't go too much into the rest of that affidavit, but the deaths being attributed to coronavirus are adding unconnected deaths to the totals being used, and this is criminal. There are many criminal things going on that are being pushed into the public's face. But this is a tyrannical takedown assisted by basically all of those people that you voted for. All MPs, ministers and the Prime Minister are involved in an unlawful and illegal conspiracy. And the last few shows about Mind Virus Lockdown, I've basically put this over as a concept that there is no legal standing, substance or evidence being presented which justifies the public being put under lockdown. And that's what this case is about in Ireland. And on Tuesday, we're going to have John Waters talking about this on RBN Network. Next Wednesday at 9 p.m. on our YouTube live platform. And on windowsontheworld.net, John Waters is going to be talking about this case because we're at the beginning of this case. It's not going to be heard properly until a week Tuesday, and it will probably drag on and on. They're trying to drain these people of money, and these people know all about how to handle courts. Both of these people, John Waters and Gemma O'Doherty, are very familiar with litigation. So this is going to be a very interesting fight and a very important one. Because if this takes off in Ireland, then maybe, you never know, it might even take off here. But basically, let's get back to yesterday. Let's have a little light relief now. A gathering of interested parties in Glastonbury on Saturday was attended by several people I know, and also Piers Corbin. Now, he was doing his own thing on the megaphone, along with some fiddlers and guitars, a nice little gathering in the middle of Glastonbury town. And police turned up, and this is from Somerset Live. Now, Somerset Live have slandered people that I know in the past. Look at an article on Windows on the World called 5G protesters libelled by local council, I think it's called, and it's all about people who were libelled by Somerset Live, and their story that they printed was found to be untrue. So let's see what they said about Piers Corbin and several other people who gathered, up to about 40 or 50. Some people said there was a lot more than that. It was all filmed, you can find it on YouTube, but it was the beginning of basically saying, no, we're not having your lockdown. Police dispersed up to 40 people who were reportedly engaging in an anti-coronavirus lockdown protest that allegedly included Jeremy Corbyn's brother. Avon and Somerset Police said 30 to 40 people turned up at the peaceful protest at Marketplace this afternoon, but not everyone was following social distancing and lockdown rules. No, some of them were actually dancing with each other. Some of them were talking to each other. Photos show, now get this, multiple police officers, two of which were on horseback, and police vehicles were at the scene. A video on YouTube states Piers Corbin, the former Labour leader's brother, gave a speech at the protest in Glastonbury, which appears to have been well received by the people in the crowd. The speaker can be heard saying, "There's no pandemic. We'll have more deaths from loneliness, suicide, and people being kept out of hospital." Sounds quite sensible, doesn't it? "We can't wait until a vaccine is developed. Government told to start lifting lockdown." Oh, that was another story. Sorry about that. I don't think Piers said that, did he? Superintendent Andy Bennett of Avon and Somerset Police said, "We attended a small protest in the centre of Glastonbury this afternoon." Now, I think the key here is never to call anything a protest. Just go about your business. Protests mean that you're playing into the Hegelian dialectic, the problem, reaction and the solution. The thesis, the antithesis, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. Don't want any of that. That's all in the computer program. So basically, he says, "We are pleased the overwhelming majority of people complying with the current guidelines are staying at home and social distancing. We continue to encourage people to follow this message to protect our NHS and save lives." Now, what was interesting was the police didn't really know what to do and they stood on the sidelines. So I think this is the idea, is that just carry on as normal as if nothing's happened. And if enough people do it, then you can go back to normal. In actual fact, I think what would be a great idea is for Glastonbury to start opening their shops, because it's only a small place. They must all know each other. So get onto your local kind of network of small businesses and just all start opening up your businesses again. I think B&Q have opened, haven't they? Homebase or one of those. Yeah.
Basically, it says a ban on public gatherings of more than 2 people was implemented by the government in late March. A resident, here we go, the mind virus kicks in. A resident contacted Somerset Live saying the crowd, which was reportedly there from midday until approximately 2 p.m, were protesting against the use of 5G. Well, they were obviously not there then, were they? The busybody, the snivelling wretch who reported them to the police, the hive mind artificial intelligence robot, got it wrong. Oh, what a surprise. The algorithms must have been out. And no mention of an anti-coronavirus lockdown protest was made by the useful idiot of the Stasi. However, other reports and video footage suggest the gathering was in objection to the government's response to coronavirus. Oh, yeah, this is such a badly written article. Now, I don't know whether you know this, but Reach PLC, who own, I think, the Daily Mirror and many other newspapers, own this Live group. And they have libelled people I know. They've printed untrue stories, and they say they have a thing called qualified privilege. Well, if the story is libellous or not true, that disappears. So what we need are people in the legal profession who aren't bar prostitutes to step up to the bar and start reacting accordingly when these libels happen, because there is money to be made here. Wouldn't it be great to bring down one of these organisations? Wouldn't it be great to install journalists back into the press? But as usual, the demonic entities possessing these prostitutes is apparent in their ability to be coherent or even create a story. Read it and weep. Yeah, crap in, crap out. So in other words, artificial intelligence would be better than using these so-called journalists. So in other words, there are some advantages to the AI rollout, but the replacement of these drones with competent robots would be a good start. Those who are policing each other for the state are the victims of the virus. There's no doubt about that. The evidence for this fear campaign and its instigators has been fully exposed for those who wish to find it. Nothing is hidden. Everything is by consent. We've made this point in previous shows. That consent will be brought about by deception and coercion, and that's the system. Nothing is hidden. There are no secrets. The prophecies of Revelations, which we started with actually talking about at the beginning of the show, are a business opportunity for the biometric industry. Think about that. It's a good one. The World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence website. Let's get onto that now, because I think if you're interested in this stuff, you should maybe sign up for their newsletter. It's absolutely fascinating. It's layers deep, and it outlines basically a real-time planning and reaction to what's going on. In other words, there's nothing spontaneous. And guess what? That includes terrorism. Terrorism is factored in through think tanks, and we're going to get into that. Organisations will have to make use of machine learning, says the World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence website. An artificial intelligence in order to better measure and report cyber risk as they confront issues associated with the proliferation devices powering smart cities and the Internet of Things. That's their introduction to it. As we know, this is all the fourth world, the wilderness of the mind, and the fourth industrial revolution. Now, this again is from the World Economic Forum website talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We're in that section of the website. It represents a fundamental change in the way we live, work, and relate to one another. It is a new chapter in human development, enabled by technology advances that are commensurate with those of the first, second, and third industrial revolutions, and which are merging the physical, digital, and biological worlds in ways that create both promise and peril. Well, both promise and peril are beneficial to a rollout in real time, aren't they? The speed, breadth and depth of this revolution is forcing us to rethink how countries should develop, how organisations create value, and even what it means to be human. It is an opportunity to help everyone, including leaders, policymakers and people from all income groups and nations, to harness technologies in order to create an inclusive, human-centred future. Let's get into the section on artificial intelligence and robots. Robots and artificial intelligence were once used only for dull and difficult work on factory floors. Today, automation is everywhere, powering drones, cars and surprisingly realistic humanoids. Are these the ones who are queuing up 6 feet apart? or those who are going to be replaced by these realistic humanoids? Are these the ones who are queuing up outside supermarkets 6 feet apart? Are these the ones who are shopping their neighbours? Are these the ones they're talking about? I think they are. Those on the wrong side of history. I think that's what they're talking about. It says robots are ready to get more social, and some of the latest models can even cross the uncanny valley. The uncanny valley. By convincing us they are human. Well, no, I'm sorry, they can't do that. Next generation robots will be performing tasks that require even more complex decision making, aided by continuously increasing computer power. In January 2016, the company Nvidia unveiled a supercomputer capable of up to 24 trillion operations per second, equal to the power of 150 MacBook Pro notebook computers. But can it get any inspiration? Can it come up with a split-second thought which changes everything? I don't think it can. Meanwhile, the increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence powering popular entertainment and social media platforms is raising questions about whether it not only better engages audiences, but also helps spread harmful content like hate speech and conspiracy mongering. Here we go. Okay, so technology is a double-edged sword, is it? This briefing, it says, is based on the views of a wide range of experts from the World Economic Forum's expert network and is curated in partnership with Charlotte Stix, a research associate and policy officer for the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence, University of Cambridge. Now, look this up because it's quite hard to find this website because it's got a very strange title. It just says icfi.ac.uk. icfi.ac.uk. You'll have fun looking on this. Who's it connected to? The Newfield Organisation, the Wellcome Trust, Economic and Social Research Council, which is housed in the same building as the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, and the British Psychological Association, which is responsible for rolling out the preparedness type of strategic intelligence to the media, if you want to put it like that. They are partnered with, the Royal Society, Barclay USA, that is, I think, Cambridge, Oxford, and of course Imperial College. Well, who would have thought? They've also got Imperial College on board. Let's have a look at what this website says. It says, preparing for the age of intelligent machines. Our mission at the Leverhulme Centre for Future Intelligence, CFI, is to build a new interdisciplinary community of researchers with strong links to technologists and the policy world and a clear practical goal to work together to ensure that we humans make the best of the opportunities of artificial intelligence as it develops over the coming decades. Topics range from algorithmic transparency to exploring the implications for AI for democracy. Artificial intelligence for democracy. What do we want democracy? When do we want it? Now. Whose streets? Our streets. Yeah, robots can do that. Robots like Extinction Rebellion. They could be replaced by artificial intelligence. Well, they could be replaced by something artificial, really, couldn't they? Intelligence isn't really in it. Many researchers now take seriously the possibility that intelligence equal to our own will be created in computers, perhaps within this century. Freed of biological constraints such as limited memory and slow biochemical processing speeds, machines may eventually become more intelligent than we are, with profound implications for us all. Now, this is interesting because in the world of academia, this may be true, but in the world of creativity and manoeuvring and non-linear thinking, it's not even possible. Let's see what they say next. As Stephen Hawking has put it, when it eventually does occur, it's likely to be either the best or worst thing ever to happen to humanity, so there's huge value in getting it right. Now, wait a minute. As Stephen Hawking put it, how does anyone know he actually said that? Nobody knows he actually said anything. We therefore aim to bring together the best of human intelligence so that we can make the most of machine intelligence. Funded by a £10 million grant from the Leverhulme Trust, the CFI will explore the opportunities and challenges of this potentially epoch-making technology, short-term as well as long-term. based at University of Cambridge, with partners at Oxford Martin School at the University of Oxford, at Imperial College London, and at the University of California, Berkeley. So we now know that this is part of the globalist rollout. The AI agenda is running along the World Economic Forum. It's all business partnership, and it all goes down into think tanks. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This is where it crosses over into, guess what? Yes, the new predictions of terrorist attacks. And it all ties in to ISIS. Would you believe this? Strategic Intelligence and Monitoring ties in through the Lowry Institute in Australia, which is linked in to the World Economic Forum, and the Lowry Institute links in to websites such as Jihadology, which is all about ISIS secret intelligence. And it's all run by, guess what? You'd never have guessed. Well, it's monitored and released by Israeli intelligence. So what we have here is a global action plan for everything. This is the artificial intelligence rollout being rolled out in real time, not only as a pandemic, but as the future of all events. So this is where creativity and the underground will come in, because this global action plan cannot possibly compete with unpredictable creativity. It can't do it. This is what I find fascinating. It's not factored into their programme at all. Absolutely not. I'm going to have a short break here and finish my cup of tea. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
If you realise how deep the rabbit hole goes, I mean, the people coming out now, even in the entertainment business, saying, I sold my soul to the devil so I could be famous. You go, Jesus, yeah. And you look at people and you think, how did he get famous? He's crap. You know? And then you think, oh, he must have sold his soul to the devil. Oh, here's Wayne again. He's going to give us all that New World Order crap. And you think, oh, why am I wasting my time even mentioning it? You know, it's only in conversation. And they'd rather talk about football. And, you know, you think, oh, what a waste of space. You know, and it's, oh, Manchester United did this. And you think, what a load of crap. Who cares? You know, who cares about Manchester United and Manchester City? And then you look, you think, this is it. They're just programmed. That's going to be their life. You know, women will watch soaps and men will go to football, and then you'll get up in the morning, you'll go to work and you'll do this, and then you'll finish at 5 if you're lucky. You'll go home, you won't have time for your kids, you won't. And you think, but is this what we're born for? You know, just to be slaves, really. You're just slaves.
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net.
Right, thanks for everyone in chat and their amazing comments. Yes, someone's mentioned Amitai Etzioni. If nobody out there or anybody out there knows who he is, that would be quite a remarkable thing, because he's not well known, but he's basically like a granddaddy of communitarianism. And someone's just put into the chat box that his son Oren is into the artificial intelligence agenda. Well, of course they would be, because communitarianism is the ultimate hive mind, the ultimate control system, because that's where we get our citizen spies, that's where we get our NGOs, that's where we get our protest groups. They are all part of the same intelligence network. Interesting stuff. But we were talking about creativity and thinking outside the box. Let's now get on to a section on this website that we're talking about, the Preparing for the Age of Intelligent Machines, which is the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence, ICFI. Oh, sorry, no, it's an L, isn't it? It's a small L, sorry. lcfi.ac.uk, lcfi.ac.uk. And now they're talking about autonomous weapons. This project is also a starting point for the study of many wider legal questions that artificial intelligence presents. Legal systems have long considered the delegation of decision-making authority but decision makers have been human beings acting individually or as institutions. Now, can you see what they're doing here? This is very important because I've been dealing recently with multi-agency complicity in criminal activity. Multi-agency complicity in criminal activity. Does this open the door for that? Well, I think so. Even more. Therefore, let's have a look. AI poses the question whether and to what extent we should entrust decisions, including decisions that carry significant and irreversible consequences, to non-human actors. Therefore, this work links to several other projects, including trust and transparency. Look it up. They've got things linking into different areas on this website. Trust and transparency, agency and persons, and politics and policy. Can you see what they're doing? They're replacing the executive, judicial and administrative system with artificial intelligence. And it will just need basically human robots to administer it. Politics and democracy. It asks how well equipped are existing democratic institutions to deal with the risks and opportunities of the long-term transition to AI, given the limitations of electoral timeframes and the constraints of public opinion. Does AI require a technocratic rather than a democratic regulatory framework? And if so, what might be the cost for future democratic politics more widely, including for public confidence in democratic institutions? It asks what kind of political agency might be attributed to new forms of AI. Can machines be politically answerable for their decisions in the way that human agents have traditionally been? Well, let's have a look at what we've got in government. Would it matter if those people in the UK government were replaced by artificial intelligence? It wouldn't, would it? Because the rollout of COVID-19 is above them. They have nothing to do with it. They are merely administering what they've been told. So it wouldn't matter if Boris Johnson had been replaced by a robot. It wouldn't matter if Matt Hancock was a robot. And I think he probably is anyway. But this is the sort of artificial intelligence they're talking about. They're talking about people who are basically human robots. These people are human robots. They're not necessary. They're change agents. They're there to create change. They're there to create and manage change for their overlords. They are of no importance. So this is a big question. Do we need politicians anymore? No. Well, the Global Action Plan certainly doesn't. Can machines be politically answerable for their decisions? If not, where is accountability to lie in any system when more and more of the work of government is being done by systems and machines? Can machines act as either principals or agents within the structures of representative politics? What role is then left for conventional elected representatives? There you go. That preempted what I just said. Well, I preempted what that just said. What role is then left for conventional elected representatives? Can you believe this? Can other forms of artificial agency, e.g. corporate decision-making, provide models for understanding artificial intelligence? So basically, creating the shadow global governance structure. That's what they're doing here. An example of which is what is being rolled out with the current pandemic. Its strategies and responses are followed by global governance on a nation-by-nation level. It could all be done in real time, algorithmically, with artificial intelligence. And in actual fact, it wouldn't matter if it was. It's our reaction to what is being rolled out that's important. And that reaction has to be outside what is in the computer. If we're outside the hive mind, then this will fail. And that, I think, is what these prophetic kind of texts that I've been reading out are indicating to me. Because I find this fascinating. This is a new frontier of confrontation. This is a dividing line like never before. Planning for the global crisis is done in cross-referencing agencies, government departments, private institutions and think tanks. This includes the current pandemic, yes, the climate change agenda and international terrorism. It is planned and executed by a network of agencies with the complicity of all governments. And what's this called? It's called the common good. It's called the public interest. The planners exploit anything which may appear spontaneous into the forward-planning corporate surveillance state and this narrative to exercise further control. That's all that's happening at the moment. To the public, this is a conspiracy theory because the very people planning it told them so. That's part of the programme. So when people say that's a conspiracy theory, they are part of the artificial intelligence hive mind programme. They are not thinking. They are acting reactively. They are acting with implanted information that was implanted into their minds by the people who are creating the artificial intelligence to program them further. Now, this was from the Lowry Institute. This is Frank Lowry, of course, if anyone doesn't know, the owner of Westfield, Lucky Larry Silverstein's business partner. 3 months before the Twin Towers came down, they were purchased by Frank and Larry. What a business partnership that is. Larry, of course, and Frank are very much part of the Zionist supremacist elite. And this was very interesting. I was listening to an interview today, and it was all about Epstein and his contacts. And of course, that goes into very, very high up far-right extremists by their own definition. That's what these people are. They're far-right extremists, which is why they have to call anyone who calls them out far-right extremists. It's called reversal. This was written on the Lowry Institute website. Now, this is directly related into the World Economic Forum and the Global Action Plan. Now, the Lowry Institute is an independent think tank founded in April 2003 by Frank Lowry to conduct original, policy-relevant research about international, political, strategic and economic issues from an Australian perspective. Based in New South Wales, the Lowry Institute is at the centre of Australia's foreign policy and national security debates. Every Prime Minister and Foreign Minister since 2003, when the Institute was founded, has spoken at the Lowry Institute. Well, it's a bit like APAC, I suppose, in America. These organisations are all linked up. But these think tanks and NGOs are the shadow government that run everything. They're all part of the artificial intelligence strategy, the strategic intelligence narrative. It says our annual poll of Australian public opinion is cited around the world. Our experts are sought out by the Australian media for commentary on breaking events. Of course they are, because these people own the media. They are the media, including our flagship, the Lowry Institute papers, published by Penguin, helps set the national agenda. Can you believe this? Australia's government takes instruction from Frank Lowry. Well, I can believe it. Have a look at Frank and where his family are from and what they were part of. Frank was part of the terrorist organisation. His family were part of the terrorist organisation in Palestine, 1948, called Haganah. The other was Irgun. If we look at the people who were participating with Haganah and Irgun to kill the British and to kill the Palestinians, when this was just before the Stern gang came into operation, Avraham Stern, of course, who was killed by the British because he was killing British people and civilians over there. And this started basically what was called the IDF. So the Haganah and the Irgun, these two terrorist organisations, prescribed terrorist organisations, which Frank Lowry was related into. I think his family were in Irgun, or Haganah, sorry. And you get people like Michael Chertoff, head of national security in America, who was the person who put all the airport scanners in. If you look at his background, I think he's Irgun. So this is interesting, isn't it? So we have these supremacists who are basically controlling the narrative through these think tanks and governments. It says the think tanks, basically, yes, the Lowry Institute, that sets the national agenda. The think tanks and propaganda agents surrounding the computer model pandemic are all a counterintelligence operation. They support the growing fringe in criticising governance and the media propaganda and mix it with the general media narrative being imposed. The threat from the aware observers is demonised and compartmentalised by the intelligence-blaming narrative. The far-right meme is the weapon of choice. The real racial supremacists hide their supremacy behind victim status and attack the enemy or the rational-minded with what they themselves are doing, the simple act of reversal I was just talking about. The Epstein, Maxwell, Mossad, MI5 and CIA connections are the relatively public face of globalism. These are all in the public domain now, right? These are all in the public domain, but this is just the front of it. Once you start digging deeper, it becomes absolutely obvious what's going on. The world mafia system's not hidden. It isn't secret societies. It's open corruption supported by the state. Now, we featured the comedy Nazis angle with this Vice article on right-wing Nazis spreading conspiracy theories about right-wing eugenicist Bill Gates. I mean, the irony wasn't lost on me, But this is where it all comes from. But Vice is obviously very close to the idiocracy. But yeah, they said, I think I covered this on my American show on RBN. They said, neo-Nazis are spreading a list of emails and passwords for the Gates Foundation and World Health Organization employees, basically because both of those organizations have now been completely discredited in the public. So they have to keep saying this, and they have to blame the people who've woken up to what's going on for doing it and being far right and stitching them up. We talked about what happened in New Zealand. The New Zealand mosque shootings last week with Barbara McKenzie, how this all ties in. Incidentally, Barbara McKenzie, who writes a great blog, and she has it, stuavono.org, which is the Greek, and she found Agenda 21 through our article on the Joe Cox kind of assassination and the work that I'd done on Hope Not Hate. So that inadvertently led Barbara into looking at Agenda 21. We found that out last week. But yes, very interesting stuff. The unintelligence community love these one-trick ponies. Yep, I suppose you voted Brexit. I suppose you support Trump. And I bet you think Elvis lives on the dark side of the moon. And somebody phoned me up the other night and she said, I actually was in a car with someone. I mentioned something that was truthful, which they didn't like, and they said, I bet you think Elvis lives on the dark side of the moon. So it has caught on. It has caught on in the artificial intelligence community. The drone hive minders have actually taken to this. Yeah, very interesting stuff. Let's get back to the World Economic Forum and basically a bit of right-wing comedy. This is related into, the Lowry Institute. Now, the Lowry Institute are found through the World Economic Forum. So look on the World Economic Forum website because it all links and crosses over. This is by Lydia Cahill. It's not the Irish spelling, Khalil. I think it's Arabic. Media propagandist, basically. She calls herself a research fellow, but she's a media propagandist. And the title is COVID-19 is accelerating the rise of right-wing extremism. Times of crisis tend to bring out conspiracies, crazies and extremists. During the COVID-19 pandemic, this has been ever more pronounced, particularly in Western democracies, where trust in government has ebbed to an all-time low. Mental health services are already strained and right-wing extremism is on the rise. No, it isn't. Stop lying. Stop lying. It isn't. I mean, it's just a joke, this, isn't it? Back-to-back emergencies in Australia from bushfires in January to the COVID-19 pandemic in March have spurred an increase in extremist narratives. Do you see how this is totally nonsensical? This is where their artificial intelligence falls flat on its face, isn't it? Even before COVID-19, it was only a few weeks ago, wasn't it? Even before COVID-19, right-wing extremism was expanding at an alarming rate, with a 320% global increase in just the past 4 years, according to you. A scroll through the internet shows how right-wing extremists are using the coronavirus to stoke extremist narratives and encourage mobilisation against outsider groups and government. Well, actually, I think what she means here is there's a growing number of people who are putting information out from real doctors, real medical experts, and real statistics. I think that's what she means by far right. I think she means people telling the truth. The COVID-19 pandemic has struck a chord with right-wing extremist groups because it fits with an increasingly popular fringe theory among the far right, that of accelerationism. This is a strategy of hastening the collapse of society to promote its restructuring on completely different ideological grounds. Well, isn't that exactly what they're doing? Isn't that what these institutes and organisations are doing in real time with their artificial intelligence? They're hastening the collapse of society. What is COVID-19 about? It's hastening the collapse of society. So all you have to do is read their documents, and it's exactly what they're doing. But they're mirroring it and saying that we're doing it. the people who've woken up to them. So if you've woken up to them, you're spreading right-wing narratives when they're the right-wing extremists. Isn't this fascinating? This is where artificial intelligence falls flat on its arse. Or the people who are trying to implement it do. Yes, a leaked memo within the US Department of Homeland Security revealed that white supremacists and how many white supremacists and neo-Nazis do you see in your street? I've never seen one, have you? Are encouraging infected members to spread the virus to law enforcement and minority communities. Now, this actually came out of an alleged incident, I think, where someone said, "I'll sneeze on you." So they must have been a right-wing extremist, wasn't they? Memes on right-wing forums, such as what to do if you get Corona-19, urge followers to visit your local mosque, visit your local synagogue, spend the day on public transport, spend your time in your local diverse neighbourhood. Well, it is incredible. That is absolutely fantastic, that one. The risk extends beyond rhetoric to physical attacks. On March the 24th actually, FBI agents killed a known right-wing extremist during a sting operation after learning of his plans to bomb a hospital treating a number of COVID-19 patients. Dr. Anthony Fauci, he's a reliable kind of source of information, isn't he? The leader of the US COVID-19 task force, well, he's certainly that, isn't he? Has been forced by credible threats to take extra personal security measures. Well, no, he's not. They are surrounded by security and get put into bulletproof cars anyway. What a load of rubbish that is. Terrorism laws in the United States are already being invoked in an effort to deal with COVID-19 related extremist acts. Well, when's there been one? Someone's offered to sneeze on someone, have they? Someone said, "Oh, I'll go into a mosque and sneeze on them." This is quite unbelievable. Any sources to this, I wonder? No, there's no sources in this article of this artificial intelligence robot propagandist. But yes, misinformation, truth and trust. They've got very similar names, these people. This one's by Natasha Kassam. I wonder if these are aliases. Research fellow, basically propagandist, on diplomacy and public opinion. Get this. Some governments are rebuilding public trust through competent and honest responses, but distrust and deception in public life is accelerating, and the truth, already undervalued in recent history, has become another casualty of the war against COVID-19. Even as COVID-19's death toll mounts, the world should brace itself for attacks by ISIS. I'll just roll this back. Even as COVID-19's toll mounts, the world should brace itself for attacks by ISIS, which believes it can exploit the disorder the contagion is causing. This continuing jihadist threat requires the sort of international cooperation that militants hope the virus will sap. But while UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has argued that mankind faces a common enemy in COVID-19... Wait a minute, I thought our common enemy was climate change, according to the Club of Rome. Now it's bloody COVID-19, is it? Now it's the seasonal flu. So it's gone from the weather to seasonal flu. And thus appealed for a global ceasefire. ISIS has made clear it sees things differently. But do you know what? Do you know why? Because in a new editorial in its weekly newsletter... Wait a minute. Yeah, I did say that right. In a new editorial in its weekly newsletter, ISIS has told its membership... Wait a minute. Is anybody out there on the ISIS mailing list? Can you believe this? Do you think you're going to sign up on the ISIS website? I mean, do you think that you might get the Prevent strategy team knocking on your door and have to explain yourself if you join up to the ISIS newsletter? Well, no, you don't actually. You know why? Because it's called Jihadology and it's run by an Arab and an Israeli. That's great, isn't it? Everything's covered. There you go. In a new editorial in its weekly newsletter, ISIS has told its membership that their globe-spanning war is to go on, even as the virus spreads. Moreover, it has told them that the national and international security regimes that help keep the group in check are about to be overloaded. Well, who'd have thought and who would have known? And that they should take maximum advantage. In the new issue of the Islamic State's newsletter, Al-Nabar, number 226, this was posted on March the 19th this year by Aaron Y. Zellin. And for prior parts, you can go right back to part number 185. They're all there. Click on it, read it and weep. Jihadology.net. What does it say about itself? This website is a collaboration between Ayam Jawad Al-Tamimi and Aaron Y. Zellin from Jihadology. It provides an extensive archive of internal Islamic State documents which are different from its propaganda materials. Whose propaganda materials? Theirs or ISIS's? This front page will highlight recently added documents to the archive. Goes on. Now, this is from the World Economic Forum website. Basically, it's all about people being arrested in Germany and children not being able to play out. So just to recap, I am going to go on just a few minutes longer with this stuff from the World Economic Forum, but this is just something I've been looking into in the last day or so. So this means that the Mind Virus program of artificial intelligence not only includes the rollout of the Mind Virus COVID-19, but the strategic intelligence of ISIS. And the institutes and organisations I've mentioned tonight are all involved in this rollout and strategy. It's something to think about, isn't it? Do join me on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. on RBN Radio. The link's on windowsontheworld.net if you can't find it. That's Republic Broadcasting Network. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Wednesday, Windows on the World live on our YouTube channel and on windowsontheworld.net. This week, I'll be talking to John Waters about this hopefully landmark case being brought against the Irish Parliament, who only had 38 members in the chamber when this law was passed, which is the same type of statute as our COVID-19 bill over here, Bill number 122. The difference being that the Irish have a written constitution, and it's going to be challenged on constitutional grounds and several other issues. I'm going to be getting into that with John Waters on Wednesday. Do join us. Tell your friends about that. It's an important one. But to finish off, this is from the World Economic Forum website. Spain's children are allowed outside at last. After 6 weeks at home, Spanish children under the age of 14 are being allowed outside for the first time today. They are permitted to be outside for 1 hour, must stay 1 kilometre from home, and keep 2 metres apart from other people. They are permitted to be outside for 1 hour. This is unbelievable, isn't it? Children in Spain are allowed to go out for 1 hour. Bikes, skateboards and scooters are all allowed. That's good of them, isn't it? Although playgrounds remain closed. Psychologists have worried about the impact of children being kept indoors all the time, especially those in apartments with no outside space. Can you imagine what this is like? Can you imagine? It must be driving people mad. One psychologist told the BBC that even an hour a day would be beneficial to the mental health of smaller children in particular. Meanwhile, protests in Berlin. German police arrested more than 100 people in Berlin on Saturday night as they protested against the lockdown measures. Germany went into lockdown on March 17th and still has no strict curbs on public activity to slow transmission of COVID-19. Now, that was good. What happened in Berlin was very encouraging. Yes, we've got a lot more to get through, but I think that's probably enough for tonight. I mean, we've got all this stuff about coronavirus surveillance and this rollout of an app, and is it voluntary? We've got the biometric virus or vaccine, the virus in the vaccine. We've got biometricupdate.com. Do have a look at biometricupdate.com for all the latest on what's being rolled out in the robotic world of artificial intelligence and the COVID-19 strategic intelligence community. That's it from me tonight. Thanks a lot. Quite a dense show. These Sunday shows are a bit dense. And there was quite a lot to think about in there, but that was great. So, yeah, good advice from our chat room. Ditch your smartphone. No smartphone, no app. No justice, no peace. Whose streets? Our streets. Yeah, that's great. Just having a look through what's been said in chat. It's always good. So yeah, join us on those shows, on the RBN shows, Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m, and Wednesdays on our YouTube channel. That's it from me, and good night.
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net.